Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here with another Friday Reads. This week, I am still enjoying the Big Book Summer Challenge. This is a challenge that I host every summer. In its 11th year, everyone is welcome to join. The idea is just to read bigger books during the summer. And whether that means just one or two, or like I like to do, a whole stack. A big book is any book with 400 or more pages, and you set your own goals. So I hope you'll join the fun. All the details are included down below. As for me, I'm in the middle of Scythe by Neal Shusterman, one of my big books for the summer. Although this is one of my shorter big books. It's only a little over 400 pages. I have been wanting to read this for years, ever since it was released. My family and I are huge fans of Neal Shusterman. If you're not familiar with him, he mostly writes middle grade and young adult novels. This one is young adult. He is an outstanding writer. He's probably best known for his dystopian novels. This is one of those, but he writes a wide variety of novels for teens and young adults, and a few middle grade novels as well. My whole family, our older son and my husband and I, when our son was in high school, got completely immersed in Shusterman's Unwind series. Highly recommend that. It's still one of our family favorites. So anyway, Scythe is book one of a trilogy. As you can see, it's also a Prince Honor book, and it is dystopian, as I said. So this is set in a world far into the future in Middle America, which is now called Mid-America and is separate from the countries on the coast. Globally in this world, technology has gotten to a point where people are now immortal. There's no more disease, there's no more government. They've pretty much gotten rid of anything unpleasant. There is an AI. The cloud has now become the thunder cloud. It controls everything. So there's no longer any need for government, no politics. There aren't even middle seats on airplanes anymore. They've gotten rid of anything unpleasant. People have nanites in their bloodstream that if you injure yourself, automatically begin healing and provide pain relief, so there's no pain. And because disease has been conquered, there's no death. If you do die, which they call deadish, you just get taken to a revival center, and within a few days, you're back to your normal life. So that's this world. But they have realized that population would quickly outstrip the Earth's resources if they didn't have some way to control population. So the way they do that is with scythes. These are humans who are chosen to kill other people. Although they never use the word kill, it's called gleaning. And it's supposed to be, not all sites follow the rules, but it's supposed to be based on what they call premortal times and the statistics of how people died. So there's a scene early in the book where a scythe chooses a high school senior. He says he's chosen him because he fits the profile of the kind of teenager who most frequently died in mortal times. And that is someone who has a driver's license and drives recklessly and drinks a lot. And so he has chosen this boy from this school for gleaning. Because in the old days, a certain number of teenagers would drive due to drunk driving accidents. So this is the way this world is supposed to work. Not all sites follow the rules, though. And at the start of this novel, two teenagers are plucked out of their families and schools and normal lives and chosen to be apprentices, scythe apprentices. So they are training with this one scythe named Scythe Faraday. Each scythe takes on the name of some well-known figure from mortal times. And Scythe Faraday is training these two, even though only one of them can actually become a scythe. So that's the setup for this. It is an excellent book, just as I expected from how much I've loved his other books and from all the wonderful things I've heard about this trilogy. I'm like about 3/4 of the way through now. The world building is fascinating. This is a really, Schusterman always takes a very thoughtful look at what a dystopian future could look like based on things that are really happening in the world today. This fits in that framework. The whole scythe system is fascinating and horrifying, of course. But it's also full of suspense and action. As always, there's a lot of heart here. Just an excellent book. And that is Scythe by Neal Shusterman, book 1 in his Arc of a Scythe trilogy, and a very highly acclaimed novel that I'm enjoying very much. As part of Big Book Summer, I choose to also listen to big books on audio during the summer. My current big book on audio is Everything the Light Touches by Janice Parriott. So this has been compared to Cloud Atlas, which I loved, and Cloud Cuckoo Land, which is on my Big Book Summer stack for this year. It's been compared to those highly acclaimed books because it is similar in the way that its framework is set up. It is 4 separate stories of 4 different characters in different times in history. So we start out with Shai, a young Indian woman in modern day India. She lives in a city. She's lost her job and she's kind of at loose ends. And she goes to visit her parents and finds out that the woman who was her nanny all through her childhood and teen years is not doing well. So Shai decides to go visit her. But this visit is a real journey because her old nanny lives in a mountain village, a very remote mountain village in northeastern India. This village is so remote that there are no roads to it, even today in modern times. So she takes a bus as far as she can, and then a kind person who lives in the village offers to, says that she can walk with him and his family as they're walking to where the village is. There aren't even any like dirt roads. It's very remote. So Shai stays there. She begins helping to care for her nanny, who has 2 daughters of her own. And she kind of becomes a part of their family in some respects. One daughter doesn't really accept her. But while Shai is there, she finds that she begins to get in touch with the natural world. And this is the thread that runs throughout Everything the Light Touches. Each separate story is linked by nature and by plants. So Shai begins working in the garden, helping out around the house, and beginning to reconnect with nature. The next story is about a young woman named Evelyn, or Evelyn, as the narrator says in the audiobook, in Edwardian England. So this is the early 1900s. Evelyn is from England, but she is traveling on a ship to India. And she is of an age where everyone is trying to set her up with a man so that she can be properly married. But Evelyn has no interest at all in marriage. She's been studying at either Oxford or Cambridge, I forget which one, and she's been studying botany. And she is very interested in traveling to India and traveling into some of the remote jungle areas to see some of the plants that she's only read about. And one of the botanists that she's read in her schooling is Linnaeus. And so the next story actually looks in at Linnaeus, who is a real-life historical figure. His part of the story takes place in 1732 in Lapland, where he has traveled. He is working as a botanist and taxonomist. Linnaeus was then and is now famous for organizing the plant world, for designating which grouping plants fit into, for organizing them into separate species, different groups, for coming up with names. He was into organizing and separating plants. The fourth story is another historical figure, although I have to admit, I didn't recognize the name at first. This is the plight of many an avid reader. We are used to seeing things in print and don't know how they're pronounced. So this is about Goethe, and I'll include the name printed here so you know who I'm talking about, because it wasn't until I looked at a summary of the book for my weekly Monday what I'm reading summary on my blog that I realized who this section was about. He's another famous historical figure. He's famous for many things. He was a writer, a poet, a playwright, but he also wrote a little known book about plant life. And it was based on this time in his life in the 1780s when he traveled from his home in Germany to Italy. And this trip to Italy changed his life. It changed the way he looked at life. The plant life was entirely different, and this is what got him interested in botany. He was familiar with Linnaeus, but after his time in Italy, or during his time in Italy, he begins to look at the plant world in the opposite way, as a whole. He sees how all the different parts of the plant world are connected instead of how they're different. So that's the setup of the book, these 4 different stories. I'm quite a ways through it now, and I've been through each of the characters once, and now we're kind of going back up through time. I assume toward the present. I am reading Evelyn's second part. So I've heard 2 parts now about Goethe and Linnaeus, and we are making our way back up to the present day. I'm really enjoying this book. It is beautifully written. The language is just wonderful. I have to admit, listening on audio, sometimes I get distracted if I'm doing other things while I'm listening, and I have to remind myself to kind of tune in, because this is a book to pay attention to. It's a very thoughtful book. As with Cloud Atlas, I love the way that the different stories are interconnected, the way that they, in tiny ways, touch each other. And of course, I love the outdoors. I'm a big fan of nature. So I love that nature is the thread that pulls all these stories together. So that's Everything the Light Touches by Janice Perriott. I am very much enjoying this big book on audio. So that's what I'm reading and listening to this week. I would love to hear what you're reading. Let me know in the comments down below.